How can grammar help game designers? Hi, I'm Dr. Waters and welcome to Game Design Wit. As I've covered in a previous video, how we talk about games impacts how we're able to think and design them. Knowing this, designers came up with a concept that's loosely known as the noun-verb description. I'll elaborate. Here's Cinemark citation for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which I trimmed to keep short. Harry Potter is the orphan son of two powerful wizards and possesses unique magical powers of his own. He is summoned from his life as an unwanted child to become a student at Hogwarts. There, he meets several friends who become his closest allies and help him discover the truth about his parents' mysterious deaths. Now compared to the summary of a video game, in this case Mario 64 Wikipedia page, which I also trimmed because reading stuff is boring. In Super Mario 64, the player controls Mario through several courses. Each course is an enclosed world in which the player is free to wander in all directions. The worlds are filled with enemies that attack Mario. The player gathers stars in each course. Challenges include defeating a boss, solving puzzles, racing an opponent, and gathering coins. Both these texts sum up the main parts of their respective products, but notice a key difference. In the Harry Potter summary, there's an abundance of nouns: son, wizards, powers, child, student, Hogwarts. Now look at Mario 64 summary. It's abundant with verbs: control, wander, attack, gather, defeat, solve, race, and so on. You notice the same pattern in the descriptions of other games. Warcraft 3 Wikipedia entry repeatedly mentions the verb to build, which makes sense as the game's mechanics focuses on its economy. Titanfall's entry uses the verbs summoned, drop, and deploy to refer to Titan's entry into the battlefield, which highlights the integral part of the human psyche of killing bugs. It makes sense to have an abundance of nouns when talking about the plot of a novel, since it usually concerns itself between the relationship of characters and objects. Meanwhile, games are about performing actions by the player, and thus it's with verbs that one can imagine the experience of playing a game. The noun-verb description acts then as a tool to help design a game. If you're going to edit a game story, then what nouns are you using? Which nouns describe its atmosphere or setting? Meanwhile, if you're going to conceptualize a new gameplay mechanic, then what verbs best describe it? I mean, look at how many different ways you can simply maneuver in Mario 64. You can walk, sprint, jump, wall jump, yes, that is a verb, crawl, swim, fly, and somersault. The game constructs numerous puzzles and obstacles which can be resolved by using various combinations of these. But games aren't just about stacking verbs. They are also about how these verbs relate with each other and the game's objects. To help with that, let's take a look at this model, which I call the verb-noun graph. These are meant to highlight the relationship between the various actions, that is the verbs, that a player can perform with a game's objects, that is the nouns. For example, in Mario 64, a player can jump, squash, kick, and sometimes grab enemies. This displays the rich diversity of player-enemy interaction in the game, with the notable exception of the verb to love. Now let's contrast this with Okami's verb-noun graph for its drawing mechanics. Throughout the game, there are numerous obstacles which the player must use the appropriate drawing to clear. With over 20 drawings, most of the puzzles revolve around finding an obstacle and figuring out which drawing clears it. It's a novel mechanic, but it doesn't offer a lot of replayability since once you figure out the right drawing, there's no reason to revisit a puzzle, unless you really love wolves or something. Also, the drawings don't allow the possibility of combining their effects, further minimizing the level of playfulness one can have with this mechanic. Compare this with the Incredible Machine and Dota 2 verb-noun graphs. In the Incredible Machine, each object can interact with every other object in the game via numerous ways. A bowling ball, for example, can push other objects. You can also start a hamster wheel. The hamster wheel can start a jack-in-the-box or turn a fan on. The fan can push a basketball, which bounces when hitting the ground. A bouncing basketball can then push a bowling ball down a ramp. The complexity of the Incredible Machine's verb-noun graph allows one to build solutions to puzzles that even the designers didn't think of, with the exception of putting the hamster in the microwave. Maniac Mansion fans, you know what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, in Dota 2, Viper's corrosive skin can slow down an enemy. This in turn helps out Mirana's Sacred Arrow since it's a skill shot and slow down enemies are easier to hit. The Sacred Arrow can also stun the enemy, which, well, you get my point. However, since Dota 2 is a competitive multiplayer game, one needs to properly balance their verb-noun graph, which is something I'll cover in a future video. I'd argue that games with a dynamic and complex verb-noun graph possess high replayability, because they allow the player to play the game by finding new and intricate combinations of what they can do. But what do you think? Drop a comment below on which games you think have noteworthy verb-noun graphs. Also, if you want to help out the channel, hit the share button and spread the word. This is really helping the channel get traction, and I appreciate your support. I really do. Lastly, don't forget to click, push, poke, or press the subscribe button as well. See you next time.